things that was kind of transpiring during my 1 week ban from this YouTube platform was that the Biden administration kind of decided to get the U.S. troops that had been in Afghanistan since fucking 2001 out of that country. I don't necessarily... How crazy is this, though? A quick sidebar. I went out in public with the shirt completely inside out, and my kid didn't even say anything. But anyways, I don't think we should be giving Biden, frankly, a whole lot of credit for doing this. I mean, it's more or less inevitable the United States was going to leave Afghanistan at some point. Obviously, we should have never been there in the first place. It was never about promoting democracy or protecting, the rights of women or other vulnerable and marginalized groups within Afghanistan. It was always about expanding the influence of the U.S. empire and kind of strategic interest in the region, or maybe that, Afghanistan has a massive amount of mineral wealth. But as soon as the U.S. left, pretty predictably, the Taliban basically took back over the country, which, they were running before the U.S. Invaded and occupied their country again since 2001. Needs to be pointed out, Taliban supposedly, they had literally nothing to do with the, attacks on the U.S. on 9/11, and I want to say it was Hugo Chavez or maybe Evo Morales when they were asked about, the U.S.'s war on terror, and, basically, the paraphrase, but you can't fight terror with more terror. I mean, Jesus Christ, like, that this U.S.-led war and occupation and invasion of Afghanistan, was very successful for the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, the General Dynamics, the Raytheons, the Halliburtons, etc., because this war cost several $trillion, massive amount of money that could have done a whole lot of good, either in Afghanistan or otherwise, if it hadn't been devoted to, dropping bombs and building drones and spending all this wasteful money on the military. Obviously, huge financial cost to this war, to this occupation. It's been going on again almost 20 fucking years right now. But then also the human toll, probably hundreds of thousands, several hundred thousand Afghanistan people are now dead as a result of this. And then, the several thousand U.S. troops as well. What did they, die for? Again, like, not promoting freedom, not promoting democracy. They were there, for fuck's sakes, guarding the opium fields and just trying to expand the influence of the U.S. empire in the region. So, it's good in a sense, obviously, that the U.S. is pulling out of Afghanistan, but I'm not giving Joe Biden a whole lot of credit for that. He's always been, a warmonger, whether it's been, Iraq or Afghanistan prior to this. And again, the foreign policy under Biden hasn't really changed a whole lot. This is a bit of a departure, which is good. Obviously, the U.S. should be out of all these countries, shouldn't have 700 plus military bases in, over 60 or 70 countries. But there's still, so I guess they still have some people at the airport, having abandoned its embassy in the Afghan capital, vowing, shortly after the U.S. left, there was pictures of the Taliban in the presidential palace just chilling. Stark decline in Biden's approval rating at home. That's interesting. Again, I think, frankly, I don't want to give Biden much, if any, credit for this, but this is one of the few things that Biden has done since being in office that I actually and am actually in agreement with. I don't know if that's the same for you or not. Let me know in the comment sections down below. But then again, look, and so the U.S. won't be there. U.S. troops won't be there physically, but they're going to start sanctioning the fucking shit out of the country and not allowing the, Taliban access to any central bank assets the Afghan government have in the U.S. will not be made available to the Taliban, said an unnamed U.S. official. According to that same report, the Biden admin has now frozen the assets of Afghanistan, the vast majority of which are not held inside of the nation's own borders. I mean, Jesus Christ. This means that for one of the poorest countries on the planet, it may now even be more difficult to bring in international humanitarian aid at a time when the ongoing refugee crisis is expected to escalate. Again, all of that is a result of this U.S. war and, occupation that's been going on again since 2001. And now we're saying, nope, can't have access to any of that stuff. Just suffer and die. You defeated us like we were defeated in Vietnam. Now we're going to try to sanction the living shit out of you, literally. Yeah. Taliban talking the talk as the U.S. trips the trip. And it seems like they're, at least in their rhetoric, the Taliban are saying, no, we're going to do a little bit better. We're not going to, treat women as poorly as we had done previously, or just kind of, some of the brutality that they were known for. I guess it, remains to be seen if that's actually going to happen or not. Yeah. So pretty interesting. China has stated it's ready for friendly relations with the Taliban, while Russia and Pakistan have also raised similar sentiments. U.S. may not have a physical presence inside of Afghanistan in the future, but fears that economic sanctions may end up being more deadly than its armed force. Jesus Christ. We do not need to be fucking sanctioning Afghanistan. Look, occupying it for 20 years, killing several 100,000 Afghani people, several thousand U.S. troops dead, and just utterly destroying that country and leaving it in ruins. And now we want to, sanction it even more into the fucking Stone Age. Just how disgusting. Taliban, this is from People's Dispatch. Taliban fighters entered Afghanistan's presidential palace hours after President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, which, again, he was just a puppet, a U.S. fucking puppet, a puppet for the U.S. empire and imperialism. Defeat for the United States. This is Vijay Prashad. Obviously you can't... wasn't a victory for the U.S., right? Rejecting Taliban from the country. None of these wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, resulted in the creation of a pro-U.S. government. Each of these wars created needless suffering for the civilian population. Millions of people have had their lives disrupted, while hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in these senseless wars. What faith in humanity can now be expected from a young person in Jalalabad or Sirte? Will they now turn inward, fearing that any possibility of change has been seized by them by the barbaric wars inflicted upon them and other residents of other countries? But what is the point of bombing a country if that violence attains no political ends? The U.S. used its advanced drones to assassinate the Taliban leaders, but for each leader that killed, another half a dozen emerged. Call that blowback, you know. Besides the men in charge of the Taliban now, including the co-founder of the Taliban and head of its political commission, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, were there from the start. It would never have been possible to decapitate the entire Taliban leadership. More than $2 trillion has been spent by the U.S. on the war that it knew could not be won. But again, I don't think it was ever really about winning. This was good for the U.S. empire. This was great for the military-industrial complex. This was great for political ratings in the beginning. Meanwhile, stories spread across Kabul about ministers of Ashraf Ghani's, that's the former president, government attempting to leave the country in cars filled with dollar bills, which are supposed to be the money that was provided by the U.S. to Afghanistan for aid and infrastructure. The drain of wealth from the aid given to the country has been significant. In a 2016 report by the U.S. government Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction relating lessons learned from the U.S. experience, investigators write, corruption has significantly undermined the U.S. mission in Afghanistan by damaging the legitimacy of the Afghan government, strengthening popular support for the insurgency, and channeling material resources to insurgent groups. The money fattened the rich in the U.S., Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Obviously, that $2 trillion wasn't given to the working class, wasn't given to the vulnerable, marginalized in Pakistan, in Afghanistan. That's completely true. Corruption at the very top of the government, depleted morale below. Afghanistan, its neighbors. And then they're, Taliban saying now, all former government officials need not fear for their lives. They're reassuring messages for now. Meeting with China. Pretty interesting. So, remains to be seen what the future for the people in Afghanistan will look like post U.S. occupation, which again, just insane. Like 2001, I was 14 fucking years old, right? Yeah, and I'm almost 34. Like, that is just insane. Just the human cost, mainly, obviously, substantially that cost is borne, by the people of Afghanistan, and then the several thousand U.S. soldiers. But, Jesus Christ, in the U.S., really, like, anybody from Afghanistan that, wants or needs to come to the United States, like, we should accept them with open and willing fucking arms and be giving them gifts and lavishing them with everything for what we've done to their fucking country, right? I don't know. So, obviously, I hope that this new tune we're hearing from the Taliban, that they're going to treat women better, that they're not going to go after the, officials of the former government. Hope that, ends up being the case. But, overall, it's good that the U.S. is getting out of that country, a place they should have never been in the frickin' beginning, right? Don't want to really give Joe Biden any credit. This was bound to happen at some point, and I guess he deserves a tiny bit of credit because, again, there's been Bush 2 terms, Obama 2 terms, Trump 1, 5 administrations Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. 4 administrations could have got out of there, didn't choose to. Biden did. I guess he deserves a tiny bit of credit, because again, this is one of the few things that I think he's actually done, especially on an international foreign policy level, that's actually positive. Let me know what you think down below. How much credit should we give Biden for pulling U.S. troops out of Afghanistan? But then, should we really be giving them any credit if we're just going to sanction them, back into the Stone Age even more, so they're not able to access any of these things, so they're not able to get humanitarian aid, which is deeply needed? So it's pulling the troops out is good. Maybe also end the fucking sanctions so that country can start to rebuild and come together and figure out what they actually want to do on their own without, U.S. fucking presence in their country. I mean, Jesus Christ. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Become a patron if you're so inclined. I just added another tier, a $1 tier. And all power to the people. Peace.